Hey friends, welcome back. Boy, it's been some time since I've uploaded a video, but I am pretty much neck deep into removing and replacing the steering rack and pinion on this 2100 series Land Cruiser. Got the brand new one sitting over there on the table, and I had to replace a torn boot kit, a torn boot on my left-hand CV. So since that whole thing was out, and I've been kind of postponing this particular job for quite some time, this isn't going to be a how-to video of step-by-step, but I'm just going to cover the highlights and maybe some tips that might help you if you're getting ready to do this yourself. Let me show you what's going on underneath here real quick, and then hopefully we yank this thing out and be halfway through the process. All right, here we are. Obviously you're gonna need your dust shield, skid plate removed, okay? I have elected to use the, disconnect the left-hand driver's side engine mount and jack it up. Right now I've got it up about 1 inch, which netted me a fair bit of real estate right here to get that rack out without having to pull off the oil filter housing. And I can still probably jack that up a little bit more. Just we haven't quite gotten to that part yet, but everything else is pretty much straightforward. There is one kind of tricky bolt, and this is the last bolt in this assembly holding this together. And so I initially broke it free with a flex head 19mm 3/8 drive. It wasn't in there too badly. And now that that's free, I can pretty much use a standard shorty, regular length 3/8 drive ratchet, okay? As always, definitely encourage PB blaster on every bolt that you anticipate having to turn. And fortunately, pulling those off was pretty easy with a pipe wrench, okay? No problemo, okay? So you're gonna wanna take some pictures and some measurements and whatnot before you get into that part. Let's just see if I can actually wrestle this damn thing out, and then we will discuss the challenges and whatnot that I faced. Success. That was probably 10-15 minutes worth of time lapse of the actual, no, the last bit was trying to get this disconnected, and I maybe worked on that for 30 more minutes. So it's been said, hey, there's an excellent forum thread on I Hate Mud for this job, 30 some odd pages. I've read through it numerous times in preparation for this job, and it's super key to at least get through the first couple pages, because that's where I picked up the tip on jacking up the one side of the engine, which I had to just jack up a little bit more, practically as much as it can possibly go. Who knows what it's squishing up in the firewall area and whatnot, but if it hadn't been for that, I probably would have had a lot more agony. But yeah, I guess before we go over and look at the new one, let me just talk through all of pretty much the steps that were crucial in succeeding at this. Not necessarily in order, but as you can see, I've got my whole CV shaft out, which enabled me to have a lot of access underneath here. Okay, and that was probably beneficial for removing the motor mount. There's just 2 motor mount bolts right over there. You can see how far off it's lifted right there. It has been stated on that forum thread, that's where I was at a minute ago, that if you struggle really hard with this lower end one, just go ahead and disconnect the top one and it can come out with this upper shaft installed. I do not see how that would be possible at all. Some folks on the thread say that it's been done, but I gotta remember to put the bolt in up top, because I did start trying to take that bolt out, but I couldn't even get the upper part disconnected. That was gonna be just as big of a challenge. So clear up there, way up at the top of that accordion boot steering shaft, right? So I think it's absolutely critical to get this off. So everything has been soaked in PB Blaster for several days. Oh man, for a long time, honestly. I mean, when I first got that steering rack, I PB Blastered that stuff a year and a half ago. And then before I tackled it here, I put it on a bunch of stuff too. But this guy right here is a bear. And so that's probably the crux of this whole operation. And so I managed to use, got 2 different pickle forks here, you know, used for basically destroying ball joint boots. But those 2 pickle forks, I was able to work this angle right here to drive into the wedge, into the split of that collar on the U-joint linkage there. And so this is just one of those ones where it's like, you see how rusty that bitch is in there, but it's just one of those ones where it's like, it's obvious that's gotta be the solution. If I had a bigger hammer, it might have reduced the amount of time I had to spend doing that, but you just had to keep tapping on it, keep driving that wedge, that chisel tip punch, as it were, into that gap until finally it broke free. I mean, again, I struggled with that for a long time now. Everything else is pretty straightforward. I did disconnect the lines, as you saw before. This part right here, that upper line, you know, these are included in the new rack, so you shouldn't have to mess with those and disassemble them. But kind of thinking if I took those off, it would probably slide in a lot easier. So I'm kind of considering that, but I'm just gonna try to get it through there. That contacts this point of the oil pan right there, so it's a little bit of interference there. But I did leave my steering wheel centered and did not drive the rack one side or the other. One of the initial posters on that thread states that driving it to the passenger side is key, but another dude said, nope, just leave it centered. So that's what I did. I left it centered. And I do think if I had driven it to the passenger side a little bit more, I probably wouldn't have struggled so hard getting it out right here. So the next big challenge is going to be getting the new one measured and then lining up that stupid shaft, steering shaft, to get a straight steering wheel. So that could be a lot of trial and error. But anyway, that's what's up with that. So this thing was leaking a bit. I mean, you can see the boots, the condition of the boots. This truck's got 270,000 miles. No, that's not right. It doesn't have anywhere near that much miles. 220, somewhere around 220,000 miles. Okay, so I encourage you to go ahead and change out your bushing. Looks like as I pulled this thing apart, I remembered that I had gotten in there and changed out this bushing some time back. And that's probably when I really took note of how bad that rack was. But anyway, it wasn't dripping and pouring out, but I do have some alignment issues. This thing's been aligned. It was aligned at the shop a year ago after I did some work on it, and the alignment held, and then now started pulling pretty hard. So kind of between worn out inner tie rods, these things, from what I understand, like, are supposed to be stiff enough. They're just a little ball joint inside there, stiff enough to hold that thing up. It's kind of one telltale sign to see how the condition is. But you know, it was just seeping and oozing and leaking, and yeah, probably giving me alignment issues. So that was the main reason why I decided to change it out. So let's try to get this thing reinstalled. It wasn't that long ago that I replaced that outer tie rod. That's a 555 Japanese outer tie rod. This side is the original. So I bought a new one back a year and a half ago. So I've got a brand new outer tie rod to put over here. I'm kind of wishing maybe I had got a second one, but you know, where does the money go, right? Anyway, that's enough rambling. Let me know what your questions are in the comments. There we have it in all its beautiful glory. Sadly, when I bought this damn thing, I bought the new banjo seal for this one line, and I have turned my truck upside down trying to find the damn thing. It's one of those ones where I had it in hand 6, 7 different times, kept putting it in a spot that I knew that I would need it, that it'll be there when I need it. So aggravating with that, but we're gonna reuse the copper washers off of the old one. Now, I think these things retail for about 700 some odd dollars, 750 probably. So if you've got a hookup, you might be able to get these for around $550, depending on your circumstance. But I wouldn't be surprised if the dealership is going to charge you somewhere around $2,000 installed. So this is one of those jobs where it sure would be nice to be rich, where you could either pay somebody else to do this, or I don't know, have about a 2-year-old Land Cruiser, 200 series, 300 series, that you don't have to keep putting shit together like this. But as for the rest of us common folk, it's one of those ones where for about half a day of aggravation, you can probably save yourself $1,000 or more on labor. If I was gonna do this for somebody, I would definitely charge probably in the neighborhood of 6 hours labor. And I haven't even gotten the thing put back together yet, so maybe that's the best case scenario. All right, so extra fun. That nut is seized on there. Won't move. I did get the other side off and cleaned up. But this side is being quite problematic. So she's soaking in PB Blaster right now. May have to soak it, like submerge it for a day, but I'm gonna try to apply some heat to it. And so to make it easier to work with, I just pulled it off of the inside there. So this was actually a regular thread, at least on this side, the driver's side, a regular forward and reverse thread, so it wasn't too complicated. I did see a guy on YouTube reuse these for something cool for his tractor, so I've had a couple of these around, but these will be the first ones I've got intact. So, and they're really not that bad. I mean, like, they're a little clunky around the sides, but still pretty decent quality, functional. So anyway, the boot come off. You know, cut the boot off because I couldn't get it past that nut. I had to put a little slit in that there. But it's quite interesting that the gear here, it's like, how does that actually seal? I don't really know. But definitely there was a ton of sludge and shmoo inside the boot and all around this shaft here. But additionally to that, I am gonna pull this side off, and then what we're gonna do is take some measurements and evenly space it out from here to there. I may turn it around with a vice grip on there, so I get a full left turn, full right turn, and then I can kind of compare. And then what we can do is we can measure from the end of, from a mark to the end of the output and make sure that we are installing the new one centered when it goes in. All right, so check it out. This might be useful. Popped both of these off. Turns out this one's actually kind of new. I looked at that and I was like, what the heck? Surely that's not OEM. This is the OEM one. And I recalled, fun story, is the reason I have a new outer tie rod end on that side is because of a little incident that happened at the auto shop. That's why I have an inner and an outer, because, like I was saying, funny story is the kid apparently was turning it the wrong way and he snapped this clean off. And so that's how I ended up with the new one. But I kind of had forgotten about that they had swapped out the inner. I knew that they had swapped out the outer. Anyways, where was I going with this? Okay, so kind of interesting. That's practically straight up and down. It's 4 turns, practically exactly 4 turns from one side to the next. Okay, just about precisely. And so inside there, you can see that's a little bit further than it would turn because the inner tie rod would be bottoming out on that shelf there. And it's the same thing on the other side, but in my mind, if it's exactly 4 from side to side, then all I need to do is just turn that one exactly 2 turns in from one side. All right, split it right down the middle. So that's what I'm gonna do, and then we'll get it installed. Now, of course, the tricky part is actually lining up exactly the splines here onto the steering shaft, which, yeah, you're gonna get it pretty close, but I mean, it's not keyed or anything, so there's no way to actually be that precise. And really the last effort on that is, I've had the airbag and steering wheel off of this truck before. It's not the funnest thing. It's a little unnerving handling an airbag, but worst case is once it gets aligned, after I install it centered, if I have to pull the steering wheel off and turn it a couple notches, that would be the last kind of resort. So there you go, FYI. All right, so good news and bad news, gang. A word of caution if you're considering doing this job: keep track of your left and right turns of your steering wheel whenever the steering rack is out. Apparently, I had turned it to the right more times than to the left, or I should say vice versa. And so, once everything was buttoned up, the steering shaft was lined up dead on, straight up, steering wheel centered, equal movement from left to right. Installed the whole thing. I go to turn the steering wheel after everything's installed and running, and I start running into some resistance on the left side, on the left turn. So it turned all the way to the right, and it was making some whining noise while the pump and everything was refilling the system. So I was like, oof, I don't want to push too far right in case it come back to the left. It's clearly not steering all the way to the left. A little bit of resistance, and considering how much effort I made to, negotiate this exact problem, I thought, there must be something, just a little bit, something stuck. Well, maybe is there something weird? I checked out to see if there's anything in the way of the tires. Sure enough, I turn it a little bit further and I hear some creaking and popping right here in the steering column. So obviously, the electronicals inside the steering column can only turn so far. It's not on like a distributor system where it's got like circular contacts that allows ultimate, complete and total free spinning, which I've had a lot of experience with that type of arrangement in the past. It's not the case in this thing. It apparently has electronic wiring harness inside there that only allows it to turn so far to the one side and then turn so far to the other side. So, yeah, creak and pop. Sure enough, no more cruise control, and the airbag light is now on. At least everything inside the steering column works, the turn signals and all that. So it's just what's out here at the steering wheel. The last time I had this steering wheel apart was 4 years ago, and five years ago, and that's what we're gonna have to do to regain cruise control. Can't be having the truck without cruise control, so that's gonna be pretty annoying for the time being, but that's all I can tell you. Lasting thoughts, but everything's up and running, it's working good. Just be mindful of how many freaking turns you turn with your steering wheel, or at least reference before you reattach the stupid rack to it. Reference how many times it turns left, how many times the steering wheel turns right. It doesn't just turn continuously. It's just one of those classics where it's like, yeah, I saved all sorts of money by not having somebody else do it, but I'm just as capable of screwing shit up myself. And now it's a Pandora's box of trying to resolve one problem after another. But that's what you learn from experience, right? So I'll know for the future, but good luck on your project. And what I mean by that is, no matter how careful you are, being oh so precise, so careful, so thoughtful, and there's always going to be one little thing that's looming in the background that you don't see, that you don't expect. And that's why you pay professionals to do this shit. But after a lifetime of learning these stupid trial and errors, it's like, that's what builds our experience base, right? I'll probably forget that by the next time I have to go and do this job again, but that's how it goes.